And we are back on the build phase. I'm mrben, and today I'm joined by Midwinter Champion Sean. Welcome to the show.
What's up versus community?
So, generally, when I have people on the show for the first time, I like to do a little bit of recap. Like, what was your history with games? What brought you to Versus? And some of that ground was tread recently on an Team Apex episode, so I definitely want to direct people there. But nonetheless, for the folks who are maybe not haven't heard that yet, what was your sort of beginning with games, and kind of take us to your experience with Versus?
I guess I'll do kind of an abridged version of that. Um, Games is what I got into to get me into like a social network. When I was a kid, I had some social interaction issues, and uh, having games to play and people that cared about me was really what got me into games. I played Magic like everybody does. I do a lot of tabletop miniature games. When the original Versus came out, I was like, oh man, this is crazy cool. So I got into that. It went away. I was sad just like everybody else. And then when it came back, I was like, well, I got to do it. And I've been having fun with that ever since. Great times.
Coming from old verses into 2PCG has been a transition that not all players have handled with grace. I myself was a little grumpy about the cancellation of old verses. Did you have any, I don't know, transitional issues when you came to 2PCG? Was it, oh, this is an old verses, or was it, hey, this is the new game and I'm happy to play it for what it is? What was kind of your journey transitioning between the two?
When I was playing Versus, I wasn't married yet. And then Versus died, and I got married. And I told my wife about all the crazy fun times that we had playing original Versus. And then I heard Versus is coming back. We were at that Gen Con when they released the box. And I was like, we got to get in, So I actually bought two for myself and two for my wife, thinking that, we're going to need it. And when that didn't happen, it turned out that that was just a cash startup for the new game. I had to figure out whether or not I wanted to be okay with that and go along. So I did. More because my original Versus buddies, we all decided that we were going to do it. So we did it. And my wife played with us for a while, but it got to be something that she just didn't enjoy. Now it's kind of what I do without her, and that's okay. You can do things without your partner, and that's okay. So yeah, that's kind of where we got there. You just have to kind of realize that it's not the same game. It's got the Versus logo on it, but it's not the same game. Once you get that figured out, it's a fun game. It's fun times. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely glad that I was able to give it more than just a chance. When the initial box hit, kind of has a like eat your vegetables feel to it, where there's a lot of sort of basic, kind of flat feeling stuff. Where I mean, now that that's woven into the tapestry of the game that we have now, there's a lot of things in that box that I think come forward, like Think Again, some of the X-Men cards. But for it to be a standalone product and to go from like year five of old versus to just the Marvel battles, it was like jumping in ice water to me. I was very unsure of how I felt about it. But then with Defenders, A Force, and Danny and Ben have continued to just hit home runs year after year with the game. So I'm very glad I was able to get over that initial apprehension.
I'm with you there. I think it was maybe when Monsters came out is when I started to feel like now this game has some substance. There's some things you can do that are fun. You can build a fun deck and have a good time. Yeah. I think I'm with you. I'm glad I gave it more than just the battles.
So one thing that I mentioned in text, and I think I've publicly misattributed this story a couple of times to Vegas, but there was, I think it was a Facebook post that you made after the Oklahoma tournament where you had played Venom, you had your Venom t-shirt, your Venom playmat, and I thought it was really inspiring, sort of your summary of how that event went. So for folks who are unfamiliar with how that all went down, can you walk us through that?
Sure. So the Buckeye crew went out to Oklahoma, and me and my brother, Kevin Butcher, ended up placing first and second after the Swiss. My only loss that day was to him, and it was a blast. It was the best I'd ever done in a Swiss format, and I got to do it with my favorite MC. My favorite MC is the original Venom with awesome Sam Keith artwork, and you get to do my favorite thing in any game, and that's turn guys sideways, and you get to turn them sideways, hurt a guy, and then say you're not finished yet. You get to hurt him again, and to me that was like the funnest way to play. So that day was probably one of the funnest days that I've had. The funnest deck. I did really well. Did it with my brother. It was just really fun.
I like the idea of people being able to take the main character that you want to play, and even if other people don't believe in it, don't see what you see, but taking that to an event and being able to produce good results, I almost care more about those kinds of stories than, hey, this guy played really well with a tier one deck and he's the champion. I almost care more about the guy who had a great Swiss day with the weird offbeat main character. And that's not to besmirch champions. Obviously, the winners have also done something pretty cool. But playing off meta, particularly way off meta, has always been something that I've been kind of fond of.
I don't know if I would consider that to be off meta. If you can take something and do well with it, doesn't that make it the meta? Or is the meta just something that's played by a lot of people?
Well,
As
I suppose
I
that would
guess,
come
yeah,
down to how we define meta, wouldn't it?
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think maybe I would define meta as what solves the problems that is the game at that time. I guess that's the question. Is it that, or is it what is everybody playing?
I certainly think that there is a tendency for play rate to be sort of conflated with meta. So when you talk about like Thorigins, for example, well, it's not actually true that
Oh yeah.
everybody played Thor at Thorigins, but enough people did that that is kind of the way we remember that event, which I think that was Origins 2017 maybe. And there's been some other ones where they've really been dominant, like the year of Mimic Gen Con. Again, it wasn't everybody, but there was so much of it that if you weren't playing those big picks, although that said, I think it's kind of valid to say, hey, if I was able to have success with this main character nobody else picked, that means this main character should have been in the meta conversation. I think that's a fair observation.
Yeah, I think I'll buy that interpretation.
Fair enough. I mean, we can argue about it if you want, I guess.
I think it's good. I think that having multiple definitions of the same thing makes it so that you can test in different ways and come up with different answers. I think that the biggest enemy of coming up with different solutions is groupthink. And when you have everybody getting together and saying this is the only thing that solves this problem, then you're only going to use that one way to solve the problem.
Yeah, I have
So
a bit of a reputation of not liking groupthink. I think me and Vern went to war over that term about a year ago.
oh really?
Yeah, he had said something
Okay.
about groupthink in the versus community, and I took him more literally than he intended, and I got a little offended on behalf of the community. Like, no, no, sir. Actually, we are a community that welcomes creative thinkers. Uh, which in a more literal definition, groupthink isn't just a bunch of people doing the same thing. It's also enforcing everyone doing the same thing by shaming people for being different, which I did not think was something that happened within our community. And eventually, that's not how Vern meant it either. Like, it was a misunderstanding on my part.
Oh, okay. Yeah. When I say I guess I mean the industrial term for groupthink. So yeah, I didn't mean it as a social tool to stop collaboration. I meant it as a term that just means people don't look at other ways of solving an issue.
There's that thing I've heard engineers say before when all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I think that's kind of the
Yeah.
sentiment that we would both agree on.
As an engineer, I will say that is true.
See, I worked a lot of years as mechanics, so I definitely
Yep.
had this vibe like, I think the engineers might hate us, guys.
That's true. They don't really hate you, but I can see how it would come off that way.
No, no, I in jest, of course.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
So I did listen to your show with Vern, and I want to try to avoid retreading too much of that ground. So I will, I guess, plant a flag here, and this would be where I would normally say, "Tell me about your thoughts on the deck and what went into it." But if people want to hear that, they can go listen to the Team Apex podcast. So instead, I'm going to take this a little bit of a different direction. And I want to talk about like we have interacted with each other online for quite a few years, and we have always, I feel like, gotten along really well. And that's most remarkable in that period of time during COVID lockdowns when everybody was losing their minds. And we kind of came down on opposite sides on some of those issues. And I don't want to retread that ground here, of course. I think everybody's probably sick of talking about that. But I just wanted to mention how refreshing and cool it was to have a serious disagreement about serious issues with an internet friend and to navigate it with respect and civility and nobody getting mad or blocking or flaming each other. And I really appreciated that interaction with you because that was not the case with a lot of the people that I disagree with on the internet.
I think that what it comes down to with the way that our interaction went there is I never saw a reaction from you that caused me to either have to do something, or you didn't give me an ultimatum. You didn't say you do it my way or this is going to happen, or you do it my way or this is what I think you deserve. I don't think that anyone wants to get into a situation where that's the way that you're dealing with people that don't agree with you. I think that the way that you and I had our disagreement is that there was room for us to both think and feel and have the way and think, I guess, think, feel, and act the way that we want to. And as long as both of the parties in there are doing so and neither one is infringing upon the other's ability to do what they think they need to do, then I don't see there being a reason that we can't disagree and still have a rational friendship where, we can still care about each other.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. And honestly, that philosophy kind of dovetails nicely with what we were talking about to bring it back around to, our silly little card game. I think that spirit of collaboration and kind of like open-mindedness sort of fits into what you were saying about groupthink. What we want is a card game community that kind of reflects these values that I think you, at least in the examples that I've seen, I think you live those values, and that's very cool.
I appreciate that. That means I'm doing something right, and that affirmation is welcome and appreciated. Thank you.
Well, let's take this from Hugbox to I'm going to pick a bone with you. Let's talk
Let's go.
about uh, the round of Midwinter where we faced each other. Because
Okay.
there was one card in particular, and I don't think this was mentioned on Vern's podcast, but the Book of Ashanti, man, ruined my day. Can you talk to me about the book a little bit?
Oh yes, the book. So Kobik and the book were additions that were very pushed by a Mr. Dave Robbins. You might know him. He's a judge. And in our playtesting, those two cards ended up just swaying that deck into a power stance. And when you started playing stuff like Spook and all kinds of crazy stuff, I was like, well, I have to play the book. I have to get it. But the book was good against so much stuff. There are so many decks and lines that just can't deal with the book. If you're playing against a deck that wants to run out of time and you can get the book, they just don't get to play out of time unless they draw two of them. That's real good. But unless they have another, plot twist that's really good in the build phase, there aren't a lot of those. But the ones
Mhm.
that you do get, they're super powerful. If you can draw the book early enough against the mayor, then he doesn't get to play parallel dimensions. It's pretty good. I really like the book. It makes weird matchups a little bit easier for you to handle. It makes you play out of your box. It is one card that makes your opponent play like you're playing Molecule Man without having to play Molecule Man. And when I say that, when I played against Molecule Man, there was no way for me to look at my turn and say, well, this is what I'm going to do next turn. I had to just take every turn as it was, what it looked like in front of me, and just do what I could. And that's what you have to do against the book. Unless you have doubles of plot twists or you have a way to get rid of the book is real, real good. As you saw, the
Yeah.
book made you have to play very suboptimally. I think that you still made the correct plays when I had the book. It just makes the plays that you have available not good enough.
Well, instead of having four plot twists in my hand, I functionally had two. So there were two turns where I had to just throw a card in the trash to be able to play a second card, and I was able to play that game twice, but then I had nothing left in my hand, and I think that's when Kobik hit, and I was like, "All right, bro, you got me."
And I don't know, I don't remember who I attached the book to, but one of the most powerful things that I saw turn or game after game was taking the book and putting it on Ant-Man. It's so good. Like you make your opponent choose whether or not you're going to give me a free invention, or am I going to shrink, or am I going to invent? If I invent, I'm probably going to get the thing that's going to kill you. If I was in situations where I could put the book on Ant-Man, then I really, really was happy to do so.
Yeah, I can't remember who you put it on in our match, but I
Yeah, I
know
don't
that
remember either.
I remember that I couldn't deal with it. Like that's so I guess while we're here in Swiss rounds, were there any other opponents that you faced in Swiss or notable interactions throughout the day that you want to talk about? Something interesting, something surprising that took place during those Swiss rounds?
Yeah, I got one for you. Okay.
Great.
So, if you watch people that play decks that use inventions or have piles, a lot of the times you'll see that they're using a deck that has different sleeves than the piles they're using.
Yep.
And they
Yep.
do
Very
that
common.
so that they can easily identify at the end of the game which cards go to which place so that they can quickly and efficiently move their stuff where it needs to go, put it in their box, fill out their slip, good to go. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a little hint. Don't do that. Take the time after every round and count out your piles. Make sure you know going into the game how many cards are in each of your piles. At the end of your game, repile. Here's why. I forget who I was playing against, but this happened. I had no hand. So I was drawing blank. I was going into turn 4. I had drawn a location and a Blastar. For some reason I couldn't play the Blastar that turn. It would have been bad to do it on that turn 4. So I had to figure out a way for my opponent to think that I had an unstable molecule in my hand and keep the Blastar in my hand instead. So to the tank I went. I had to think about this. So I discarded a location from hand, and I invented before I put down a resource. I invented a Fantastic Car. I put the Fantastic Car in my hand, and then I did oh man, I forgot to lay a resource. I guess I'm going to have to put this down. But your opponent doesn't know which card you're putting down because your sleeves are the same color.
Mm-hmm.
So I put the Fantastic card down in my row. I kept my Blastar in my hand, and my opponent thought that that was my unstable molecules. So they had to play around a card that I didn't have. I couldn't do that if I had different color sleeves.
It's
And
definitely true.
yeah, so that was weird. Also in the top 8, when I was playing against Jose, me not having different colored sleeves made him have to do extra mental exercises because he's a player that's strong enough that he is going to figure out where all your he needs to know where your inventions are so that he can make his plays well. That's good. He should do that. But he had to do it with pen and paper to figure out the ratio of where my stuff should be because my stuff was all in the same sleeves. So do yourself a favor. Play all the same sleeves. That was the big takeaway from that event for me for things that I will do in the future. There was a game that I played again. What's Peter's son's first name?
Seth.
Seth. So I played against Seth. Like I said, I love guys that turn sideways. I love I love the symbiotes. And he played one of my favorite characters, Carnage. And I was like, man, I really wish I would have been able to figure out how to make Carnage work because I love to play decks that are fun. And then we sat down to play, and I played a first turn Stiltman against him, and he just could never ever get rid of first turn Stiltman. Know the meta. Don't do what I did in the last. It was when Loki came out. It might have been last Midwinter. I tried to play OG Venom, and there was a guy named Mobius that was everywhere, and OG Venom sat in the back row most of my games. so just know your matchup, know the meta. We'll use that word there, and use the same sleeves.
I will say, Seth, I talked to him about that choice, and he's like, I just like Carnage, man. I just want to get in there. I want to turn right. And I'm like, well, good luck.
Respect. I think he's a great dude, and that would have been me if I didn't play test. Like that's what I would have done. I would have brought the thing that I really loved, and I would have had fun. I have fun losing. Some of the best times that I have playing games, I walk out with the worst record, but I have a great time.
I think being willing to lose makes it a lot more fun. There was certainly a Midwinter a few years ago where I ended up giving my deck to my friend, because it was the one that he wanted to play, and I played something else. And then at like my winning in, my friend beat me with my own deck, and I was upset. You know, not at him, but like at the situation. Like I was, and I remember walking out in the hall at the Hilton there at Midwinter, and I'm like, hold on. This is stupid. You're playing your favorite game with people that you love. You cannot be upset in this situation. This is you need to recalibrate your brain here. And that has been something that I think has really helped me. Obviously, winning is always going to be more fun than losing, but I don't take losses as like a hit to my identity. I don't let losses ruin my good time. And actually, after going into Midwinter with the intent of not playing at all and only studying the meta from the perspective of being able to do good commentary, with the power going out and everything that happened, and me last second deciding to play, that's maybe the most fun I've ever had in a competitive event. And I think it's because there was no pressure on me because I went in with basically no expectations. And that's something I want to maybe try to take forward in my testing is not overtrain and not get so kind of in my own head about what I'm expecting to see and I can't play this because somebody's going to play that, and trying to be a little bit I never want to recommend to the audience to test less, but I think maybe I have overtrained to some previous events and put too much pressure on myself and actually rob myself of some of that fun. And that's a mistake I want to stop making going forward.
Hey, you know what? And you did. It looks like you had a lot of fun with a fun deck. That was a Ralph Edwards special, right?
Oh, yes, it was. Yes.
Oh
And
man, that deck. It was fun. It was a fun deck to watch. It was a challenge to play against. I didn't really understand what was going on until it happened. Yeah, you were like Ovomorph, and I was like, wow, I love that card. No, no, I don't. That's gonna hurt me real bad.
yeah.
So it was great.
And I think I actually successfully face hugged two of your guys, didn't I?
You did. It
Which
was real
is
good.
very
The
unusual for
the
Ovomorphs to be that successful.
the turns like 3 and 4. I thought you were gonna beat me. Like I thought I lost, and then I had a Valeria that landed, and I was able to get some more draw, and I got a couple more locations, and that's really what got me out of that.
Oh, the
Well, that in the
book.
book,
Yeah.
the good book. So yeah, that was that match was not a landslide. It was a hard fought battle. And what I loved about that match the most was what you said at the beginning of the match. You said that no matter what, it's a win. If you win, you get to go play the top 8. If you lose, you get to go do commentary. And I think that you were honestly excited to be able to do either of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had invested so much like mental preparation in trying to do a good quality stream of the whole event. I mean, it is disappointing that I didn't get the Swiss rounds, but ultimately I think I got the best of both worlds where I got a little taste of the competition, I got to play games with people, and I was able to really put my whole chest into trying to make a quality stream for the people who wanted to watch the top cut. So it really worked out like almost perfectly for me, which is a weird thing to say when the thing that worked out is that the hotel lost power for like a day. Like that's the thing that worked out for me.
Crazy. There is something I want to give you. I want to give you props. Your commentary was great, and it was even better because I have a boss, one of my bosses at work. He is really into poker, and when he and I were talking about what I was doing that weekend, or what I do any weekend that I'm going to go play nerd games with my friends, he's like, "So wait, you build a deck to play with?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Does everybody get to build their own deck?" And I said, "Yeah, because this is completely out of his wheelhouse. He's a poker guy."
Hmm.
And he's like, "Well, why don't you just put all the best cards in your deck, and then you'll win every game?" And I was
Oh, I
like, "I
love it.
didn't even think about that. That's the best line of thinking I've ever heard." So I got him a Civil Wars battles box, and I gave it to him, and I said, "Well, here's the game. If you have questions on how to play, you let me know. When you're ready, you build a deck with cards in this box. I'll do the same thing. You put all the best cards in your deck, and we'll see who wins." And he still hasn't done that yet. I think he's scared. I hope he listens to this and he hears that. In your commentary, so he asked me for a live feed if there was one. So in between rounds, I sent him a link, thinking that he'd be like, "Oh, thanks for the link," and not do anything. Well, he got on and watched, and he was Steve in the commentary that you were doing really good commentary, like talking about how the game works, because he had no idea. and he was really excited that somebody was, willing to take the time out to tell him what was going on. So I think that good commentary is going to get people able to watch and learn, and then maybe we can get some new guys playing.
Oh, dude, you have no idea how validating that is to hear. That was the goal, was to try to make the game accessible to somebody who was curious that maybe wouldn't be able to watch like a non-commentary stream where you just hear the players talking. So the fact that that actually worked for at least one person is like, yes, yes, that's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, it sure did. It sure did. And I will when this goes live, I'll send him a link to this interview, and he'll get to hear his name in the interview, and he'll get to hear that he validated somebody, and I'm sure that'll make him feel good.
Well, you know the myth, and I'm not totally sure that this is actually what happened, but the myth that I was told was that Richard Garfield was playing poker, and his big insight was, well, what if everybody had their own deck? And that was the like big idea that was the foundation for Magic the Gathering. So
Oh,
the silly children's card games that we play and poker actually are a little bit more wedded in their DNA than you might think at first glance.
I had no idea. That's pretty cool.
I mean, I was told that story as if it was true, but I've never actually looked into verifying it. So, grain of salt. People say things that are not true all the time, but I believe it to be true.
Well,
And I hope it is because it's such a cool story.
so I was going to ask the deck that you played, the Ralph Special. What do you think was what would you have done differently with that deck? Is there anything you would have changed if you were building it?
I'm hard pressed to second guess because I didn't put the reps in. But when I was filling out the deck list, one thing that I stubbed my toe on is, man, this is a lot of plot twists. Like, this is more plot twists than I would typically run in a deck. That said, at the table, having that deep resource of plot twist, like my assumption was I was going to empty my hand and not have enough to do because plot twists, they're one and done. Characters, you recruit them and they stick around. I tend to, as a player, like things to be stickier. I like characters that have more than one health. So there's a few things about Ralph's choices that cut against my like natural bias as a player. However, playing the what was it, 6 rounds, those 6 games, I feel like some of my initial apprehension was wiped away. Without the list in front of me, I'm super hesitant to be like, oh, I'd change this or change that. Uh, but that's kind of my thought process. As I was looking over the list, I thought it looked a little plot twist heavy, looked like it didn't have enough characters. But the way it performed over the course of the day, I really feel like there was only one game where the deck just kind of like fell flat and I just couldn't really do anything. And my loss to you, I feel really like I think I had the tools in hand, but once you stuck the book, I couldn't deal with it. The one matchup that I really feel like I should have had and couldn't was facing Galactus. Now, before I sat down, Vern had asked me, well, how do you think Deadpool does against Galactus? And I was like, well, I think he does pretty well. Like, I don't care about your big stats because I'm dealing with you with things like Spook and that stupid +4 zombie plot twist. So I'm not very worried about that. I've got Ovomorphs and chest burst and things like this to deal with the field. The one miscalculation I made with Galactus though was stand together. And that broke me like a twig, man. So I think my analysis was
Stand.
a little off on the Galactus matchup, but I didn't factor in the stand together being able to just be like, nah, you don't get to use superpowers this turn or next turn, you know?
Stand together is like a book in your pocket.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I'm ready for that to be incurred. I'm ready to not see that card again for a while.
What do you think it's going to take to get the book incurred? There were two books in top eight. There were two Kobiks in top eight. I don't know how one of a kind do. I don't know what we can do to save you from the book.
So
Um,
I actually
yeah.
think there is more mysteriousness, more inscrutability in the incursion process than people are giving it credit for. I think it was the Let's Get Dangerous stream where they were talking about, well, they're going to incur based on how many people played it and to some degree that's true. And to some degree they'll hit things that win and they'll hit things that performed really well, but then sometimes there's just weird cards catching strays here and there. So I don't think there is a clear and obvious path to getting a card like Kobik or Book of Ashanti clipped because they're one of a kind. So even if they're in the list, they might not show up and make impactful moments. But then again, I don't know if Upper Deck is how or SAG is looking that closely at impactful moments or just play population. Without knowing exactly what the metric is, it's hard to know what we'd have to do to get rid of it.
With the data that we have, because Dave's putting together some pretty cool data. If you've seen
Oh yeah, shout
the
out to
videos he's
those.
been putting out, yeah, we could probably use those to kind of correlate and figure out what we think is the way that they're banning stuff, and maybe we can do some guesses in the future.
I also like that they explicitly said, like, we're not banning based on power, we're not banning based on balance, we're banning for fun. So no matter what they choose to do, they have this sort of like escape hatch explanation, like, oh, we're just trying to make things more fun. So they could conceivably ban cards that didn't make the top cut, but I think that would be unlikely.
After what happened first round, I could see them maybe finding something to ban there. That game with Mr. Mulholland and Scott Watson
Yeah.
that went like an hour after the time was called. We don't want to see games like that. Props to both guys. They both had really cool decks. Just the way they interacted with each other, I was already sleepy, and
Well, and the
I was
pressure
gonna.
that put on Scott to be like, okay, your game was the one that pushed rounds late. New rounds really need to get going, and you have 3 times as much like shuffling and data tracking and stuff. I guess for people who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, the Franklin Richards that lets you play 3 decks is what Scott brought, and Mike Milholland was on Mayor with the Parallel Dimension, and they just entered this state where the game just went on forever. Yeah,
So
I would be okay with
yeah,
Franklin getting the boot from competitive play just for logistic reasons. That's like a super lame reason to get rid of a card, but also like the trains need to run on time. Like,
no, I agree with you there. I love that he brought it. I love that he's like, if I'm gonna get to play 3 decks, I'm gonna play 3. I thought that was really neat.
I mean, shout out to Scott. Like, there is some courage on that man to walk into a tournament and be like, all right, I'm going to manage 3 decks to your one. Like, yeah, dude, bigger brain than me, sir.
Right. I think Scott is kind of an unsung hero of playing stuff that's under rocks. Like
Yeah.
he plays some decks like the Infinite Turn Doctor Strange.
Have
Everybody
you
knows that deck exists.
Have you ever gone back and watched the Midwinter stream where Adam Logan was doing commentary for the moment when he like figured out what Scott was doing with the Infinite Turn Doctor Strange? Because at first he's
No.
like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't really understand." He's kind of dirtling what's Oh, wait, he's going infinite. And there's this cool moment where it clicks in Adam's head and he gets so excited. Electrifying early versus commentary. Very cool moment.
You're gonna have to go back and watch it. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it work. I've seen it work against me. It's like a deck that everybody knows. Everybody knows it can win, but nobody's playing it. It's real cool. Props to Scott. Feather in your hat, buddy. You're a different kind of guy.
He always brings interesting stuff. I mean, again, like we
Yeah.
started talking about, he's one of those guys who is not going to be swayed by what the community thinks is top tier. He's going to bring something weird. I guess he might be swayed away from playing certain things on the basis that the rest of the community thinks it's top tier. But other than that,
Right. No, I'm on there. Yeah, I get it.
we talked about this on the stream, and I think I even made a big deal about it on my midwinter summary show that I did a couple weeks ago. But I can't conclude a conversation with you without talking about the split Fantastic Four play that you made. And I guess to set the stage, me, Scott Cozzolino, and Ralph Edwards are all watching the stream, and we see Jose declare this attack in, and we see the Fantastic Four come out of your hand. And all three of us immediately go, oh, he's going to go +4 defense. He has to. And I think it was me. I don't want to steal credit from somebody else, but I think it was me. I go, wait, if he splits it, he can get a stun here and bounce the attack. And we're all like, no, there's no way he's going to do that. And when we saw Jose stun his guy, our minds melted. So for people who don't understand, this is like Jon Snow at that classic Game of Thrones where the horses are charging down at him. He's standing there with his little sword. The temerity, the bravery to make a play like that. Talk to us about this split Fantastic Four play that I think is going to go down in history of verses.
Okay. Well, You have to know some history about this matchup to understand what happened in that play. My only loss that day was in Swiss, and it was to him. And he got the initiative, and he raffle stomped me. Like it wasn't even close. Like I just lost. So after that round, I went up to Scott Cos, my teammate, and I was like, "Look, if you play against him, you got to go first because he's gonna smash your face in." And I 100% thought that if I don't get to go first against him, I lose. And that's really why, like when we were playing the last round, you and I, like in my head, I was like, I have to win this if I plan on winning, because I have to get first turn initiative twice against Jose if I have to play him. So I had to do as well as I could to make sure that I was getting that. So go to top 8. I'm playing against Jose. I get the initiative as planned. I win the first game as planned. When we're drawing for the first game of the 3, I looked at my hand. I was like, all right, I keep. And I saw him look up at me, and he was like, that fast, huh? Like he kind of made like well, then you I could see that kind of tilted him a little bit. And so I kept that in the back of my mind that me keeping fast did it. We played that first game and I won. And then I'm like, okay, well, this is the game I give away. I have to give this game away to get my initiative back on the third game. I just decided that if I drew and I saw a 1-drop and I saw a location, that I was going to say I keep as fast as possible. So I drew my hand. I saw those 2 things and I'm like, I keep. And I might have even said it out of order. Like he was supposed to tell me first, but I think I was just like, in my head, I said it as fast as I could. And then we played. And I went through that game until the turn before the kill turn. I played that game as though I was going to lose it. And I just did everything I could to just be as ferocious and as, I guess, quote unquote, ballsy as I could be. And then that ended up winning the game. It wasn't a play where I was like, this is definitely the right play. It was the play that I was like, this is the play that if I'm gonna win has to work. So I just did it because it had to work if I was gonna win, and luckily it did. And I guess that if that's a legendary play, then it was built on the back of need.
Well, it landed in such an epic way. Like Sean's not playing to avoid losing. He's playing to win, just the aggressiveness of it. It came off as very cool, man. I hear you that you weren't trying to style, you weren't going for the flashy points, but man, it was a cool moment.
It was a situation where if hard plays didn't work, I didn't think I was going to win anyway. If he would have blown me out there, it's kind of what I expected. I think that maybe, like he said, whoever invents the most and whoever gets the most stuff on the board is what wins. And I was just able to do that. I think that was it Night Watch that did that too. It was Night Watch that came in for that.
I believe so, yeah.
I believe it was. And he was like a fantastic 4 Night Watch. The biggest problems that I had thinking and putting lines together around were because of Night Watch. Like that card made me make really weird plays all day long. There was some talk about playing Night Watch as a zombie, like playing him instead of Zombie Angel. Like people were talking about that maybe being the play. I can see that if you need a zombie and you don't want to play Angel, I can see that Night Watch is a good way to go. He doesn't get like the zombie bonuses, but he can team attack with the other zombies, which is I guess what Zombie Angel needs to do. He's that's what he does. He team attacks with other zombie guys unless you get 4 counters on him, and then it becomes a beat stick. I appreciate the look of that was like, no, it's a really good play, but it was really just if it didn't work, I was going to lose anyway.
Well,
I had to go.
and to be fair, like if Jose had something else to punish you for committing it there, then nobody would be saying it's a good play. It ended up being a good play because it worked,
No, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
It's like, it's not warm in here because the electricity came back on. It's because Sean's on fire.
Man, I was sleepy. I use a CPAP to go to sleep, and I got a total of like 2.5 hours, maybe 3 of sleep that night. I was very tired.
Yeah, the lack of electricity hits people in a lot of ways that you just don't quite think about until you're confronted with it. And
Right.
not having access to stuff like important machinery like a CPAP, that's no joke.
It's a thing that has changed my life. I don't know that I ever had a real night's sleep in probably 20 years. Then I got the CPAP, and now it's like it's like I can go to sleep and sleep 8 hours and it feels like I slept. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah. My dad has one as well, and he commented on it's just so much different. Like it's hard to explain the impact that it had for him. Well, this has been the most unconventional tournament recap with a champion that I think I've ever done, and that's probably appropriate because you're a pretty unconventional guy. We've we've hit a lot of different topics here. But before we wrap things up, I just want to give you an opportunity to plug, promote, shout out. Did you have any other thoughts that you wanted to add about Midwinter, your team? Just the floor is yours. Do with it as you will, sir.
Okay. I want to say thanks to the community. I think that the versus community is the best community. I'd like to know how many people are going to be going out to Oklahoma. I have my request in at work to see if I can get that time off. Maybe Buckeye will show up and we'll do what we can to represent again. I'd love to see everybody out there. I heard that the People's Champ said he's going to be out there, so that I think we could get a good group of people out there and see what we can do.
Sounds
I
great. Well, hey,
guess
man. Oh, didn't mean
that
to
and
cut you off there.
you're good. And I love everybody. I hope that we all have a good time and play cards.
Great. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat through this. And really, anytime we interact, whether it's on the card table or otherwise, it's always a pleasure. So, Midwinter Champion couldn't have happened to a better guy. Sean, congratulations.
I appreciate it, Mr. Ben.
Go win some games.